Okay. We got one or two more coming in. All right. Welcome, everybody. I don't know if we'd have anybody or we'd have everybody with the snow out there. So I'm glad that all of y'all made it, and hope everybody gets home safe and everything. It is pretty out there, but I know it's hard to drive in. But I appreciate y'all coming. And they asked me to kind of do some basic stuff. Usually I try to do some advanced turkey tactics and stuff like that. And but I might get as advanced as y'all want, because after a little while I'd like to ask some questions, because I like questions, because I want to make sure that I'm hitting on what y'all want to know. I don't want to just stand up here and talk. So I'm just going to go over some different kinds of calls, and everybody kind of knows that I do tubes and trumpets, but I actually started off like everybody else, running all the different other types of calls. And I think it's important that you learn all the different types of calls. I'm kind of I don't know, I've gone kind of old school, and I pretty much only hunt with a trumpet, a tube call, and a double barrel shotgun, and that's just my thing. It's kind of like bow hunting. Some people like to bow hunt, and they realize at 75 yards the deer's going to walk, and that's okay. You get him closer another day. I'm that way with turkeys. I have a certain thing that I want to do. I want to shoot him up close with an old shotgun, and I want to call him in with a trumpet. And if I have to do a tube to, to get him to respond to start with, I'll do that. But trumpets and old doubles is my thing. But I started off not really knowing much about turkeys, because when I started turkey hunting, there wasn't any turkeys in my county. Now, I'm sure there was one here or there. I remember when I was a little boy, we used to dog hunt, dog hunt for deer. And I can remember, somebody would say, hey, we saw a turkey cross the road down there. It was pretty rare when anybody would ever see a turkey. So there were some around, but it just was not many. So when I started learning, I started reading about turkeys and turkey hunting, and I started over in the Francis Marion National Forest, which is in South Carolina. I know a lot of y'all from all over the country. But the Francis Marion National Forest is one of those places that's kind of historic when it comes to turkey hunting. A lot of people back in the day got their start or hunted there. It's had turkeys in it for as long as anybody remembers. And people like Archibald Rutledge, Henry Davis, and some of you may have heard of Zach Farmer. All those guys hunted the Francis Marion National Forest, and pretty much within a mile or two of where I learned how to turkey hunt. So I always kind of took that, and I always looked at the historical thing of it, and it's always kind of meant something to me that I learned how to do it there. And it's tough, because it was, even then, it was open to the public. There's a lot of people. Way more today than it was back then. But as we started getting turkeys, I was a little bit ahead of the curve. A lot of people hadn't turkey hunted at that time. So a lot of people looked at me to take them and show them and learn stuff. And, I ran a box call and a pot call. I killed my first turkey with a glass call, old glass call. I don't even know who made it. That was a long time ago. And as normal, you start progressing, you get better, and I started running a diaphragm call. But I always carried my box, my pot, and my diaphragm. And I said, well, that's all I need. Well, after a while, I said, well, all I need is a diaphragm call. So I started leaving the box and the pot behind. And, I killed a lot of turkeys, but I can tell you there's probably turkeys I left in the woods because I didn't have a box and a pot. And, just kind of being hard-headed, that's what I did, and that's what I wanted to do. I ended up starting to call in competitions somewhere around the late 80s, and ended up competing and, you know, won a few Grand Nationals and Worlds and stuff like that, all with a diaphragm. So I thought it was kind of funny today when they asked me to do this seminar, I started digging through my bag and I realized I don't know when the last time I ran a diaphragm call was. So I wanted to touch on that. So I went down to Kevin Farr at Pecker and he makes an awesome mouth call. So I picked up a mouth call. So that's what I'm going to run today. But what I want to do is start off with the basics. And that's what they asked me to do, is talk today kind of basics. Talk about the different types of calls and the basic things. But one thing, it doesn't matter what kind of call we're talking about. And one thing I want to show you, running the different types of calls, no matter what call you run, there's always going to be standards. There's always going to be the same cadence, rhythm, and the sound is going to be very similar. Now, they're going to be different because it's a different instrument, but there's going to be a lot of the same things. A turkey makes the same sound, and he's got the same rhythm, and that's what makes it. A lot of times people get out of rhythm, and it's not realistic. So realism is very important to me. I think that is the most important thing you can do on any call, but there's always going to be some standards. Now, when you first starting off, a lot of people, and especially kids, and I'm glad to see we got some kids in here today. A box call is a call that anybody can learn to use. A box is probably the easiest thing, in my opinion, to make realistic turkey sounds on. So you take a box. This one's made by Scott Bayshore. He makes an outstanding box call, and so what I'm going to do is just show you the basics, and I'm going to show you there's a couple things that I think you need to, that's real important when you're running any call, but especially a box. So most boxes have two sides. They're going to sound a little different. All right, and now I'm going to show you something that doesn't matter how you run it. Don't let anybody tell you there's one way to run a box call, because I run box calls the regular way, which is what I just did, and sometimes I hold it like this and run it this way. You hear the difference in the tone. The other side's deeper. I'm not saying that that's a gobbler. I've heard hens be very deep, very raspy, very clear. So don't get caught up in, okay, that's a gobbler yelp or whatever. It could be, but I've heard some hens that will fool you. And I've heard gobblers that sound just like an old hen. But one thing that you got to remember is it's always the same rhythm. That rhythm is very important when you're first starting, because if you go, that's going to throw a red flag, because no turkey in the woods is going to really sound like that. So the turkey might pick his head up, and old crazy 2-year-old, he might even come to that. But you're going to be lucky. The main thing you got to remember, keep that same rhythm, and you got to learn that rhythm. And the best way to do it is, don't listen to me, listen to real turkeys if you can. There's recordings. You can go to YouTube, listen to real turkeys, and get that rhythm in your head. And once you get it in your head, and you can go with it. All right, so a box is capable of doing a lot of different things. So even though it's a pretty basic call, it's very realistic. I mean, that sounds a lot like an old hen to me. You can cut on it, which is an exciting cluck. Clucking is a standard call that turkeys do, just basic, when they're feeding or whatever, they cluck. Sometimes a cluck means several things. Sometimes they cluck for no reason. Sometimes, I won't say no reason. Everything they do is for a reason, but they'll be feeding along and they'll cluck. But there's different kinds of clucks. So you got to be careful that you don't turn that cluck into a putt. So a cluck is more of a, and then a putt would be a loud, that's more of an alarm. But now cutting is kind of similar to that. Cutting is going to be an exciting type call, and they do that when they're real excited and they want attention. which is basically fast clucking. All right, so you kind of get an idea. The box is pretty versatile. You can do a lot of different things on it. All right, the next thing is a pot call, and there's all kind of stuff. There's slates, there's glass, there's aluminum. This one is actually ceramic. So what you see is right here is the playing surface, and it needs to be roughed up, and the striker, usually the striker that comes with a call like this is good to run with it. But there's people in here that make all kind of strikers that sound all different. You can take the same pot and sound like 10 different turkeys with 10 different strikers. So match the striker that you think sounds the best, that works with your call. If you don't think the one that comes with it sounds like what you want, then don't be afraid to experiment and try different things. Pretty much the same calls you can make with the box, you can make with the pot, maybe even a little easier on some things, but the way you hold it makes a difference. And we talked about rhythm, there's also tone. So if you got the tone of a higher pitched hen, maybe raspy, maybe clear, or the tone of a deeper hen, all that can be changed by how you hold the call, how you hold the striker, putting pressure on the striker, letting up on pressure. There's a lot of variables, and that's why there's no substitute. And I've always said there's no substitute for practice. You're not going to be able to pick a call up and be the best you can be with it. You can't pick up a guitar and go to playing a guitar. I mean, you have to practice, you got to work at it. And this is no different. I think turkey calls are a musical instrument. I think it's just playing the song of the wild turkey. So a pot is just basically you're pulling the striker across the surface, and you'll hear it. You start over on the edge and work toward the middle, you'll hear a break. So you got that yelp and you got that same rhythm. All right, with the clucks and the cutting. And that's a plain yelp. That's a hen that she's feeding. She's just doing a little bit of light yelping. And then we get a little bit more excited in the cutting. Sometimes it takes all that to get a turkey. Sometimes it doesn't take anything. You might pick that call up and just, and that's all it takes. I was talking to Harold Knight the other night on the phone, and I made him a trumpet, and he said his goal was to kill a turkey with that trumpet. And he took it in the woods, and he went somewhere in Kentucky. And he said he didn't think it was a turkey anywhere, but he was going to try to find one. So he took his diaphragm call, yelped on it, and a turkey gobbled. And he said, all right, I'm in business. So he went and sat down at a tree. He said, I got your trumpet out. And he said, right when I put it to my lips, I looked, and there he was. He said, I didn't even have time to do anything but shoot him. He said, so I didn't use your call. I said, well, at least you could have made a cluck on it or something, Harold. But he said he didn't even have time. And all he did with the diaphragm was just basically, and that turkey was there. I mean, that turkey, he caught that turkey at the right time. Sometimes it doesn't matter what you do. You can catch him what you think's the right time, but the turkey don't. And you can give him everything you want. I promise you, I put some championship stuff on turkeys that turned around and walked away from me like I didn't even sound like a turkey. You just can't take that kind of stuff personal. That's going to happen. Turkey's going to be a turkey. There is no way that you can kill all the turkeys and call all the turkeys that gobble to you. It's just not going to happen. If you get the ones that's ready and the ones that everything works out, and hey, there's a lot of things that go into a successful turkey hunt that is beyond calling. The setup, everything like that makes a big difference as well. So you may call, he may come to you, you set up wrong, well, you messed up again. There's a lot of ways. I've learned through the years I can mess up a turkey hunt in a lot of different ways. And that's the only way you're going to learn. You know, I have sat up and turkey gobble over here, and I would sit in the wrong spot. He'd come to my right, and I can't turn around and shoot. I've sat up in places that I couldn't see. I've called turkeys up from here to that door for me, and I couldn't see him. You got to think about all that ahead of time. So you can get as good as you ever want to be and sound exactly like a turkey and still come out the loser on the battle. So the main thing is just try to learn from your mistakes and learn your calls the best you can. No matter which one of these calls you use, get the best you can get at that call. And then, like me, sometimes it's hard for me to focus on more than one thing at a time. So I'd run a box and I'd get as good as I could on that box, and I'd get me a pot and I'd do as good as I could on that, and I'd go from there. So the thing about a pot call that I like is you got your pot, you got your striker. I put the pot in this pocket, striker in this pocket, and it won't make no noise. Sometimes a box call will call when you ain't ready. I don't know how many times I've put one in my pocket and you go to sit down or sit on it and break it or something like that, but man, it just wants to make noise at just the worst time. And all it's got to do is something like that, and you done messed up. There's several things you can do. You can wrap a rubber band around it so that it can't hit the surface. People make straps that go around them. There's a lot of things. You can put it in some vests or design to slide it down in, and I think there's some call holders right up here that you can get that'll keep them quiet. But that's one of the little disadvantages of a box. Sometimes it calls when you ain't ready. The next thing, and I'm kind of going through my progression as I learned to turkey hunt, will be the diaphragm. To me, I would have to say, as much as I like a trumpet and as much as I like a tube, there's probably no equal to a diaphragm. Diaphragm call is the most versatile, probably the best sounding, probably the closest thing overall, all the way around, to make all the turkey sounds that there is. It's probably one of the harder calls to learn. Some people can't even stand to have it in their mouth. I know when I put the first one in my mouth, I just practiced just keeping it in my mouth without gagging. Sometimes, you can't do it. It's just, I know people who just can't run it. But it's a very versatile call. It'll make any sound a turkey can make. And coming from, calling competition side of things, I can tell you all the top open callers are going to be running a diaphragm, and that's because there's probably nothing that sounds more realistic overall, and you can make the most sounds with it. There's 100 different diaphragm calls with cuts and different styles and different thicknesses, and that's real important because it's hard to settle in on one. So you're going to probably end up buying a half dozen to start with, and then you're going to like one better than the others. That's just the way it is. I mean, I'm the same way. If I got 3 calls that are just alike, I'm going to like one of them better than the other. So it's important to pick the right box. It's important to pick the right pot. But with a diaphragm, it's a little more difficult because you got so many variations that you got to try to weed through so that you can make sure that the call you have fits your style, fits your mouth. They're different size tape. But the thing that probably the mouth call has above all others is the ability to keep both hands free. So you can have it in your mouth, you can hold your gun with both hands, you can do whatever you need to do. You can even run a diaphragm call and a pot call or a box call at the same time. So if you think you need to sound like more than one turkey, then do that. So that makes the diaphragm very versatile. But there again, you got those same things that you got to keep in mind, and that's the tone and the rhythm. So the plain yelp, the cluck, and then you get more excited and you throw those cuts in there and a little bit more excited yelping. Now, I just told you his hand's free, and I got this hand up here like that. That's just a habit I got. Sometimes I do this, and I don't know why I'm thinking like a turkey, but sometimes you got to think like a turkey. You think like a turkey to kill a turkey. Whatever you're after, you got to think like. I don't care if you're trapping coyotes or what you're doing. Turkey's no different. You got to put yourself in his mind, and that's hard to do because the turkey's got a small mind, and you don't know what they're going to do. They don't know what they're going to do. I've seen turkeys that come into me and just stop and go to feed, and the next thing you know, they're walking off. I mean, they do irrational things. So, but there are things that turkeys do that are, that they normally do and they like to do. And if you think like a turkey and try to sound like a turkey, and when I was competing, I would try to put my mind, I would try to put myself and be a turkey hen, and I would try to do what she did. I would try to do what a turkey would do. And the one thing turkeys do too, and I was talking to a kid about this earlier today. One of the top kid callers in the country, competes in the Grand Nationals. He is absolutely phenomenal on any kind of call he runs. But I told him a lot of times kids, and grown-ups too, but they get so good at these calls that they end up being programmed. They'll do the same thing over and over and over. And that also throws up a red flag. So what I'm trying to say is, with any call, this goes for any call, you take a call and you just repetitively and I know that sounds like, I don't do that. What I guarantee you, the more you practice, you're going to get into some kind of a rut or routine, and you're going to end up clucking twice. You'll catch yourself doing that. Turkeys don't do that. Like I told you before, I don't think a turkey knows what he's going to say when he says it. They do things at the spur of the moment. They'll be walking around and feeding, and then, there's a grasshopper. They make a sound. They may be yelping, and they break in the middle of that yelp to reach over and grab a grasshopper or something. They do things like that. So break it up. So give it a little bit of a kind of a notice I kind of slowed it down at the end. You know what that puts me in the mind of? A hen that's searching. I've seen turkey hens come, and most of the time it's after you calling. You start calling, and I've called up hens that's looking for me. And I'll watch her. And what she's doing is she's asking a question. Where are you? She may not get real loud, and she may not key. You know, that's the whistle of a lost turkey, or a turkey that's trying to get back. She may not get into any of that, but she may come in there, and a lot of times turkeys don't really want to call any more than they have to. All they're doing is attracting predators and unwanted attention. Turkey's going to call the least that they need to do most of the time to get what they need to get done. So if a turkey's coming to me and she does that kind of a I watch her. A lot of times she comes in and she'll stop and she'll look. She wants an answer. She's asking a question and she wants an answer. Where are you? And it's not a, you know, hey, where are you at? It's just a curious, hey, where are you? I heard you over here. Tell me where you are. She wants to get back with a group. So the things that you say and the inflection that you put in often has a meaning. So keep that in mind as you're hunting, because you may want to portray that same feeling to another turkey. But now, if I'm running that same routine, I'm yelping 3 times and clucking twice and keep doing that same thing over and over, turkeys just don't do that. So keep in mind what you're trying to say. Learn as much about turkeys as you can and try to have a conversation. Because see, I can speak a little bit of Spanish. You know, I know a few words, but I can't really put a sentence together. And if I put a sentence together, I might be saying, hey, my name's I like burritos. I don't know what I'm saying. I might know a few words, but it doesn't make sense if you know what I'm talking about. It doesn't add up. So you can do the same thing with a turkey by not putting things together that turkeys do. So learn turkey language, read as much as you can, watch as many videos of real turkeys as you can, and once you get all that stuff figured out, you're going to understand, hey, you know, every turkey's got something to say. They're talking and trying to say something. Learn that, imitate it, and don't be real repetitive with your calling. And that goes with any kind of call. The next thing, and is, you know, really one of my favorites, is the trumpet. Now, the trumpet call, I don't know who made the first call of any kind, the first turkey call. I know box calls were made and used a long time ago, but I do know that trumpets are pretty much an extension of wing bone calls, and I think wing bone calls may have been the first turkey calls other than a leaf. I know Harold Knight taught me how to run a briar leaf or a green leaf in the spring to yelp on, but I think a wing bone probably, you know, used by Native Americans from the wing of a turkey, wing bone of a turkey, was probably one of the very first calls. And then, you know, as we progressed and got to where we could make boxes and pot calls and everything else, wing bones and trumpets, which is a trumpet is pretty much a turned wing bone is what it is. It's taking a piece of wood or something and making a wing bone style call out of it. But I think there was a time period where things progressed and diaphragm calls came out and people started using them and they worked and everything. And I think kind of wing bone calls and trumpet calls kind of fell to the wayside. Well, in the last few years, they've really made a comeback because people like that old school stuff and they found out it also worked. And I told you that the diaphragm call was probably one of the most realistic calls overall. But I think that a trumpet or wing bone has the ability to be as realistic as anything. And I've done a lot of studying on this thing. And when I started calling with a trumpet, I noticed that turkeys responded different. I don't understand it. I can't begin to explain why, but it seems to me that turkeys feel like it's the real deal. It's like less turkeys hang up than they did, and by hanging up, I'm talking about I got a turkey coming, and everything's good, and I got the safety off, and then all of a sudden he stops, and either I can't see him or he's out of range, and I can't get him any closer. But I feel like with a trumpet, I've had less turkeys hang up on me, and I don't know the answer to that. Maybe he thinks I'm farther than maybe it fools him as far as the distance, because sometimes a trumpet's a little bit hard to gauge as far as how far is it. It's a soft call, or can be a soft call, but it seems to carry far. So maybe he's hearing that soft sound, he's a little confused, and turkeys are hard to confuse on sound now. You can make one yelp and, he's going to pinpoint you immediately. And I think he knows where you are, but he may misjudge his distance a little bit. And that's just a theory I got. But I do know that it's worked very good for me, to the point where I pretty much only hunt with, I don't have anything else in my vest. I ain't gonna lie to you. All these calls are great, and I can tell you, as a turkey hunter, you should have as many tools in the toolbox as you can. But for me, I carry a trumpet, and that's pretty much it. I have a tube call for loud stuff in case I feel like I need to gobble, which I'll talk about in a minute. But the trumpet, it's a soft call, but I feel like it's very realistic, and it's real nasally sounding, and it's a directional call. So like the box, when I run a box, the sound from this box is coming off of it. The sound waves are coming off pretty much in a circle all the way around it. When I run a trumpet, it seems to project sound more in the direction of the call. Now, I'm not saying you can't hear it all the way around, but it's kind of like when I want to yell and get somebody's attention way off, and I put my hands up like that. Hey, yeah, you can hear it around me, but it focuses that sound in the direction you want it to. And I feel like a trumpet does that. So you don't need to be that loud. I have called really soft to turkeys with a trumpet, and they answer it from a really long way. And I'm like, I can't believe he heard that. I can't believe that he responded to that. If you ever reach that point, there's no need to get any louder. There's no point in, yelling at him. If he can hear you and he wants to come, now I'm not saying don't get excited. I'm not saying don't do some cutting and stuff like that, depending on if he's hesitant on coming and I can fire him up, I'm probably going to do that. But there's no need to get your volume any louder. So when I run a trumpet, and it's just like the rest, rhythm's important, tone is important. So what I'm going to do is some basic. I'm going to start off real soft, and then I'm going to throw in some clucks, and then I can get louder, and I can throw in yelps and cuts or whatever. I can take my hand and I can guide that sound somewhat. I've had turkeys before that's coming straight at me, and then they start going to the right. And being right-handed sometimes, or maybe I got a tree right here, I can't turn. I don't know how many turkeys I've had to switch shoulders and shoot left-handed. Sometimes they're going to come that way. But a lot of times you can take you can do it with a diaphragm when you put your hand up and do, this kind of similar. But you can kind of throw that sound. You can get it enough that you can get him at least within your range of motion. So a lot of times I'll do that if I need to. Also, when I told you about hanging up, sometimes an old trick that we used to do, and it doesn't always work, but you can sound like a hen that's walking away or leaving, and call to a turkey, and he's stubborn. He's not coming an inch farther. I have a turkey now. It's got to be thick. He can't see you for this, but you can call to him, and then you can get up and run back there about 100 yards. It works the best with two people. You leave one guy there and he doesn't call anymore, and you go back there about 100 yards and you call again. He's like, oh, she's leaving. He's going to come in and start following her, and he runs right by the guy you left sitting there. Well, you can kind of do that with a trumpet somewhat by just turning your head when you're starting to. Now, it doesn't sound we're in a room, but when you're in the woods, you can definitely tell a difference. It sounds farther. It's directional. The change is different. So sometimes that works. Now, you can get more excited. And sometimes that fires them up. Sometimes if you just like to hear them gobble, they'll just gobble their head off. Sometimes he'll gobble and won't come. Sometimes they gobble and come. But that's something that I use. I mean, this is 99.9% of the time I'm using a trumpet only. There are times when I have to hit them with a tube. Now, a tube call is pretty much, and I think a tube call goes back a long way too. I know people used to take old tobacco cans and pretty much anything like that and make tube calls out of it. But you can take a tube call and get really loud and aggressive and cut and locate a turkey. If you get there and nothing's working, an owl hooter doesn't work, or nothing works, you can't find a turkey, I have pulled that tube out and struck a gobbler a long way. I had a fella tell me earlier today, he said, I was hunting, I think he was in Montana or Wyoming this past spring, and he said he looked at on his Onyx, and it was 900 yards. He said that turkey, he said the turkeys were way over there and it was wide open, and he hit that tube as loud as he could, and he saw that turkey gobble and respond, and he said, and they came. And he said he measured it was 900 yards. And I said, man, I don't doubt it. I mean, it can be a soft call now, but most of the time I do all my soft stuff with the trumpet. These are the perfect companions, loud, soft. And I start with this and finish with that if it's a midday. You know, first thing in the morning, I'm always going to start soft. But if I hear one way off, where I hunt's a lot of water, I've called turkeys across water. I've called them across rivers by getting loud and aggressive on a tube. So the tube works a lot like a diaphragm, where it's got a piece of latex, but you don't, instead of running it on your tongue with the diaphragm call, you run your lip on the diaphragm, or the latex. And you're basically vibrating your lip on that latex. Now, it's a little bit tricky to learn, and I don't run a lip stop. Some of these have a lip stop in there, but I think it's more versatile without a lip stop. But some people like it. There's no right or wrong, whatever you prefer. But I take a tube call, and let's just say I think there's a gobbler in here. It's midday, and I want to try to strike one. The first thing I'm going to do is hit him with a good yelp, and then I'm going to listen. You can get really caught up, and you can be like, man, I sure sound good today. And you can just keep calling, and you don't even hear him gobbling because you're calling. So I'll just kind of give him a little quick. Listen. And then if he gobbles, I may put that up and go back with the trumpet. Or if he really likes it, I might hit him again with it. And you can always back off a little bit. Also notice too, I'm not doing the same thing over and over. I'm putting inflection in it. I got the rhythm is the same, but I'm giving a little bit like an accent, I guess you would say. You know, some people speak with an accent. I'm kind of giving that turkey a little bit of an accent. I'm hitting him, and then it's coming down and it's coming back. And you heard I threw a single yelp in there, just one single yelp. That's hard to do, but it's very realistic. Hens do that all the time. So the more realism, the more things you can do like that, the better off you'll be. Now, I told you we would talk about gobbling, and I do gobble the turkeys. You got to be careful. If you hunt public land, I probably wouldn't gobble. If you hunt private land and everything's good and you know your buddy ain't over there and thinks you're a turkey, then gobbling can be very effective. And somebody asked me one time, you know, why would you gobble? And I'm like, well, why would you put a strutting decoy out? If you're putting a strutting decoy out, what you're doing is portraying a gobbler. Okay, I'm giving him the visual that there's another gobbler there. He don't like that. This is his territory. These are his hens. Where did this turkey come from? Sometimes they run in there and beat the fool out of it. So all I'm doing is giving him the audio version of that. So instead of seeing a decoy or whatever, he's going to hear it. And a lot of times I'll mix that with hen because I want him to think there's hens there and there's a gobbler that slipped in there on his hens. I've had turkeys that wouldn't gobble at the hen, but they gobble at the gobbling, and they get mad. Now, I'm not saying it works all the time, but hey, when nothing else is working, that's my go-to. And many times it has helped me out of a jam, and they come running. But like I say, it's the same thing as having a strutting decoy or a Jake decoy or whatever out there. It's just the audio version. But if you notice, all of the tones and everything and all the vocabulary and all is the same. And it doesn't matter which kind of call you choose to run, as long as you practice at it and you get proficient with it, they'll all work. Some people can't run one and they're really good on another, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nobody can tell you what call you should use or what call is going to work best, because every turkey's different. I've had turkeys that won't answer one call and they would just jump all over another one. Just like a fish bait. How many times have you thrown a silver one out there and not caught anything? You throw a chartreuse colored one out there and they all jump on it. You know, that day, maybe tomorrow it'll be different. So keep that in mind and just remember your tones and practice. No matter what you do, there's no substitute for practice on any of those. Anybody got any questions?
Can you take them through like the hand placement on like from the trumpet, you know, on your bell, things like, can you show them the hand placement on, you know, some of that stuff?
Sure. So the hand placement on some of these calls, just like the trumpet. Now, it's up to the trumpet maker. Everybody makes their trumpet a little bit different. So on my trumpet, I hold it just like this, kind of between my thumb and pointing finger. And then I bring this call finger down and halfway cover the end of the call. I don't need to close it off or anything like that. All I want to do is just have enough, just a little bit of finger over it like that. And you can run it, you know, there's no real, sometimes it depends on what I want to do. I may open my hands like this. I may, if it's windy and I'm having trouble hearing it, I will do it like this so that I'm blowing that and it's bouncing off my hand so I can hear it, okay? If it sounds like what I want it to sound like, I may open my hand so the turkey can hear it. But sometimes you need to be able to make sure you're getting what you want on a windy day. So it's important for you to be able to get that feedback sometimes. And when I put my hand up like this, with the diaphragm call, I'm getting feedback. It's bouncing off of this, and I'm hearing in this ear kind of what's going on. A lot of times you project in a sound, you may not be getting all of what you're getting, but I hear every detail of that. And I hear this. And then I can open up and get loud. So that you can make it, you can close it off and get a little deeper, kind of like this. One hand be. You hear the difference in the tone. It's just a little deeper. You can even get deeper than that. You can get more of a gobbler type yelp. And see, I'm closing more of it off, and I'm giving a little bit of a sound chamber. So what I want to do is give it that hollow sound, kind of like a gobbler or a jake. So hand placement is a big thing, and it's the same on here. Just take the box call, for example. Where you put your hand is extremely important. One thing, I'm holding the bottom of the call right here. This surface right here is the one I'm running on, and that sound is made from vibration. So anything I do different is going to change the vibration. If I put my thumb right there, it ain't going to sound good. It won't sound near, and it's going to sound different. It may still call a turkey, but you'll hear, listen, you'll probably hear a difference. You hear that? And then that's just from putting my thumb on that surface. So different tones can be made, different sounds, all by hand placement. The same with a pot. You take a pot, and I always kind of hold it like that because the sound, a lot of sound comes from the bottom. So what I want to do is I want to keep that open so that sound can come through. All right, well, let's say I want to change it a little bit, or maybe you don't. Maybe there's things you don't want to do, remember to do, but. And my phone's ringing. Yeah, I put a whippoorwill on there, so if I'm turkey hunting and it goes off, it don't. That's a whippoorwill. So anyway, so I'm holding the pot. Listen, you'll probably hear a difference here. Now I'm going to put my hand flat. So you hear the difference there. So where you put your hand and things that you do, how you touch the call, all that makes a difference. If I put my thumb on there like that, it's going to sound different. Everything's going to sound different. If I put my hand further down on here, it's going to get higher pitch. So all of that stuff matters. So if you don't think it's sounding right, maybe make some of those adjustments. Remember to keep your hand off the bottom. Maybe you need to adjust where you're holding the striker. There's a lot of different things. With the tube call, it's a lot of the same thing. The tube can be closed off. It can be opened up. And it's all kind of the same thing. Hey, sometimes I put my finger inside just to take up a little bit of that hollow sound and knock a little bit of the volume off of it just to kind of get softer. So there's all kind of things you can do, and it's real important to remember all that stuff because you know if it don't sound right to you, then change up. Don't be scared to experiment with different things like that. I know there's got to be some questions on. Yes, sir.
When you were calling for competition, and let's talk diaphragm, what did you do to take care of your diaphragms between competitions or for the hunters when you get out of the woods?
Well, diaphragm calls have kind of gone up in price. What used to be $2 is now $10. So you want to take care of them the best you can. And latex is a funny thing anyway. You don't want to let the sun hit it. You don't want to leave it in your truck in the heat. So the best thing you can do, most all of them have more than one reed. Take something, a the little flat plastic toothpicks and put it in between the reeds, and that way the reeds don't stick together. Because the reeds are going to stick together. And then you got to pull them apart, and by pulling it apart, you may end up stretching it or even tearing it. And if you do that, you might as well throw it away. So take something and put in between the reeds so when it dries, the reeds are not stuck together, and you can keep it in the refrigerator. You put latex or a caul with latex like a diaphragm in the refrigerator, it'll last a lot longer. Heat is the enemy of all that stuff. So that's what I always did. Now, there was some cauls, I ain't gonna lie to you, I had a couple cauls that stuck together, and I didn't want them to come loose because I liked the sound that they made with them stuck together. I had a cluck and purr caul, and they were about welded shut. But that thing would cluck and purr like nothing I had. And I was hoping it wouldn't break. If I get the caul off and got a caul again, I was hoping it wouldn't cut loose. But you never know. I mean, like I say, but the best take care of them, refrigerator, and keep them separate.
You did that.
I did that.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else?
And in regards to having like a loud call in your arsenal,
Mm-hmm.
do you prefer the tube over a wing bone just because the tube's can make more sounds than a wing bone?
I think that you can do most what you need to do on a trumpet or wing bone, but I like the versatility of having the tube to gobble on and to get loud and excited on. And you can get loud and excited on a trumpet, but that tube gets out there. It makes some noise, and it sounds like a hen from a distance too. A lot of things can get loud, but you lose a little bit of realism as you start getting volume. But the tube can do both. So I think they're the perfect pair. I really do. Anybody else? I know y'all got to have some questions.
I've got a silly one.
Oh, go ahead.
Hope I don't embarrass myself.
You go ahead.
Talking about, when you're calling and thinking like a turkey and acting like a turkey.
Yeah.
Sometimes when I'm calling, I kind of wonder if height comes into play. Like sometimes I want to take a knee and call to get so that I'm more at the height that a turkey would be if a turkey was making a sound.
Mm-hmm.
Does that ever make any difference, or is that kind of silly because the terrain changes the height anyways?
I don't think it makes a difference, but I will tell you the sound that you are giving off closer to the ground will make a difference. Now, what that is, I don't know. If you're 3 inches off the ground, it's going to definitely sound different than if you're up here. And I don't know how much extreme you're talking about, but most of the time, I don't think a turkey can tell if you're standing up or sitting down as far as where the sound's coming from, just because of the terrain difference. And now if you're, where I'm at, it's flat, but I've never had any kind of issue where I, felt like the turkey thought. I've called turkeys up to me deer hunting in a tree stand.
Yeah.
And, turkeys are in trees too. I've seen turkeys in trees in the middle of the day calling, eating dogwood berries, calling back and forth to each other. There's all kind of things that goes on in the woods, so I wouldn't let that bother you any. Yes, sir.
Non-turkey call question.
Yeah.
Habitat question. I have a farm, it's a family farm, it was a dairy farm, a cattle farm. Hadn't had any cattle on about 12 years. So you've got a lot of pastures that have overgrown, and I'm in here cleaning these things up with briars, blackberries, and cedars, orchard grass, broom sage. My question is, as I'm cleaning this out, what is a good height from a pole standpoint in the spring? How low should I keep it mowed and let it come up? I know that's kind of a crazy question, but I don't want it to be too short or too tall at the wrong time of year.
Yeah. Okay. I think having good nesting habitat and good brood rearing habitat right close to each other is very important, because they're going to go straight from the nest into following that hen around. So you need nesting habitat and brood habitat, and they don't need to be going from over here to brood habitat, going through places where they're going to get wide open or thicket. Think about a poult. Remember I said think like a turkey. Think about a poult this tall, all right? the height doesn't matter that much, but what does matter is the ground under it. If it's really tight and thick grass, they can't get through there very well. And what is ideal, think about quail. What your best quail places, you have stuff planted for quail that quail can go through, they can run through it, but it may provide cover from avian predators, hawks, owls, eagles. So making sure that they have enough, and that hen, turkeys don't like, adult turkeys, they don't like being in stuff, up to here. Because if I'm a bobcat, I can hide anywhere. They like stuff about like that or lower. And in those poults, they have enough places to hide. Plus, think about this. The better habitat you have for crickets and bugs and that kind of thing, that's 80% of their diet right off the bat. So poults are going to key in on those things. So any place that has a lot of insects, good freedom of movement on the ground through there, but yet cover is ideal. And I don't know if that exactly answers your question, but
It did. Kind of a follow-up. My other thought was, is there anything I could come into some of these areas, because I do have the nesting areas, and I'm trying to clear out, sporadically in between.
mm-hmm.
Is there anything that I can plant? I've done a lot of research online. I haven't really found, I've got food plots for deer and turkeys use them, but is there anything I could plant in kind of an open natural area that would enhance that natural area?
Well, there probably is. And maybe plant some different types of things. You might can plant wheat, but then don't plant it real thick, or you might can plant and then mow it. You might, things that you can't plant, and maybe it's an area you can't, maybe mow some strips so they can go in and out of cover.
I kind of thought about that too.
Mowing strips that allow them to walk in the strip or dive into cover or whatever, that makes a lot of sense. Burning, you can burn a place and it provides a lot of food and a lot of new growth, and when it grows on up a little bit, it's perfect for them. And you want to burn probably before nesting season, February or something like that. That cleans the ground. It makes it easy for them to move around, and you got new growth coming up, and hopefully by April or May, it's on up a little bit. So you're thinning out some of that thick stuff. You're creating better ground, movement and better food. So any of that stuff helps. Anybody else got a question? Yes, sir.
I was wondering if you could demonstrate or maybe just talk about your opinions on the differences between imitating, say, gobbler yelps, clucks, cuts versus hen.
Yeah.
What the difference in the rhythm and the tone is to you?
Yeah. Okay. So you take a hen yelp. All right. It's usually a little higher pitch. Clucks are a little higher, and I'll kind of give you an example. Most of the time, gobblers are not going to do a whole long series of yelps. They're going to do a few yelps. It's going to be deeper, sometimes raspy, sometimes not. I think a lot of times not. The clucks are going to be deep and hollow. So you got more of a lot of times you don't get much more than one or two yelps. Sometimes it's just kind of a And that's all you get out of a gobbler. Now I had a time, I was in a deer stand one time, and I heard a hen yelping, and I heard a turkey gobbling. Now this is in the fall. So the hen started yelping, the gobbler gobbled at it. And this was right in front of me, but I couldn't see it. It was just a little thick area, and then it opened up where they were. And this went on for 10 minutes. You know, she was just yap, 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 yap. And he was on and on and on. And I said, man, and they were getting closer. And I said, I'm fixing to see a show here. And it stepped out, and it was a mature 10-inch beard gobbler yelping like a hen and gobbling at himself. and I would have bet you money. I would have bet you money that was a hen and gobbler. And I was looking at it. I saw it. And he come out, and I would have, there's no way that you could tell me that was a gobbler yelping. It sounded just like a hen, high-pitched, raspy, and then he would gobble at it. And I was like, he's a one-man band. But you don't never know. But, you know. So, yeah.
Could you go over what, if you were to remove the diaphragm out of your mouth and your tube and trumpet, what kind of sounds are you going for, like a tut, tut, or like what kind of sounds are you making?
Well, with the trumpet, I'm not really making a sound. All of that is just air. Now, I am on the clucks, I would say. I'm kind of, and I'm popping my lip somewhat, but I'm not on yelps. I'm not sucking like, I'm not doing that. I'm drawing that air. I'm just drawing air through the call. I'm not really saying anything. And that's kind of, it's hard to describe, but I'm pulling the air out, and I'm letting my mouth and lips and everything kind of work in conjunction to get that. It's hard to describe, really, how.
He would tell me he would take like a cough drop or something. You can build up that saliva.
Some people do that. I don't really need saliva or anything like that. It just depends on everybody's mouth is different. I think it depends on your mouth, but you will not get that without the proper draw and the proper. If you're pulling kissing, like, you can't get it because your lips are too busy doing that, and you got too much. It's just, I don't know. It's hard to describe. Now on the tube, there's two ways to do it. So you might actually, I was a competition duck caller and goose caller also. And duck calling, you do, on the feed call, you say tucka, 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 tucka. But with this, there's two ways of cutting. You might say took, took, took. But I can also come from the diaphragm, and I'm not saying anything. I'm just bursting air from my diaphragm. I'm not saying anything there. That's, and I'm popping it. But you got to be able to pop that air from your diaphragm, like really quick burst. And so I'm not saying anything. I'm just pretty much controlling that air. It's all about air control. When I'm yelping on the tube, I'm not saying anything. I'm letting that reed is vibrating on my lip. I'm blowing air between my lip and the diaphragm. Like if this was my lip, I'm putting it there and I'm blowing air through here, and the force of that air through there causes that reed to vibrate. Now, the more pressure I put on there, you know, this kind of goes back to science class. The more pressure you do, the higher frequency it vibrates, which makes it higher pitch. The less pressure you put, the lower frequency, the more it vibrates and the deeper the sound. So it's as simple as that. It's not simple, but it's kind of like that.
It's kind of the same concept with your inner lip on the trumpet. I mean, as far as when
Not really. Not really. I use both my lips. Some people use one lip or the other, and I kind of use both of my lips. So I'm really not doing either. But definitely in the diaphragm call is basically you're doing the same thing with your tongue. You're blowing air between the diaphragm and your tongue. Like this is your tongue. That diaphragm, you're pushing air through there, and the more tongue pressure you got, the higher the frequency. The less, deeper the frequency. High pitch, low pitch. So that's how that works. So it's not anything other than learning. It's like a musical instrument. When you playing a guitar, and I don't know how to play anything, but you play a guitar, you know, you're basically, if you put your hand down here, it's probably, I think it's higher pitch, and if up here it's deeper, and the reason being is you're not vibrating as much. You're keeping a closer, tighter vibration. So that's how all of that stuff, sound is all vibration, and how that works is how you control it and how you manipulate the vibration. So that's basically, and you know, a box call, it's all about vibration. That box, you know, that lid on that side, it just causes friction, and there's a high frequency vibration that makes sound. And the harder I push down on this lid, the higher pitch it's going to be. The less pressure I put, the deeper it's going to be. So it kind of all works the same. It's just learning how to control it, how to control air and vibration. Anybody else?
Mark,
Yes, sir.
do you believe that, say you're hunting a small area or a particular bird, maybe a couple birds in the area, that you can condition them to a certain type of call, like a pot call or a box call? Say you use that same call on these birds over and over, and then you get up and you leave, and they come looking for a hen, and there's no hen, or do you think they can be conditioned to that particular sound?
Well, I'll tell you this. If you sound like a turkey, I don't think it matters. But now, I think location matters. If I'm sitting by a big oak tree in the middle of a field, and I call up a turkey, and I miss that turkey, I don't think tomorrow I'm gonna call him to that same tree in that same spot with any call. But a week later, I might. And I think it kind of works like that. I think if you sound like a turkey, he's going to come to another turkey eventually. He's not going to spend the rest of his life running from a hen yelp. So I think the amount of time, there's a book called Illumination in the Flatwoods, and that is a remarkable book. That book, the guy lived his life as a turkey, and he watched everything those turkeys did. And I think I read in there where he came up on a stump or a log, and he would take the turkeys for walks. He came up on a log, and there's a rattlesnake there. and all of them jumped back, and they went around it. They went around the rattlesnake, and then they went on about their business. The next day, he took them out there. They all went around that log. There was no snake there, but they remembered something bad happened there, and they went around it. So I think they get conditioned to situations. You know, I hunted with a guy one time. He said, "Man, I need your help. We can't kill this turkey. We can't do nothing with him." I said, "Okay, I'll come." I said, "But I can't guarantee you nothing. We just try." We went and sat. He was sitting at a T in like a crossroads, and he went in there and he's like, "All right, man, he's coming right here. He's coming right here." And I'm like, "Okay." And we sat there and we started breaking daylight, and he gobbled. He said, "He's coming here." He said, "We missed him here yesterday." And I'm like, "We might as well go somewhere else, because unless that's a different turkey, he ain't coming right back here this morning." I mean, I'm not saying he wouldn't. You never say what they won't do. But I think I'm going to go find another turkey, or either I'm going to set up on him different. I missed a turkey one time in a field way back, and I remember changing calls. And I killed that turkey later with a different call. And I feel like, hey, what I got to lose? If I use the same call, maybe he might remember. If I change up calls, I might have a chance. So it doesn't hurt to change. You know, if you think he's conditioned to a call, then.
Well, you know, sometimes you can identify people calling the woods. You say that's a pot call, or that's a box call. And that particular person uses that call constantly. I'm wondering if they start associating.
Well, let me throw this at you. How many times have you heard a hen yelp and you say, "She sounds like a box call. She sounds like a pot call"?
Yeah.
So you see how that works? It's kind of, you had a question over here.
Yes, if you're hunting a Merriam's or a Rios or an Osceola, are you gonna call differently to them than you are an Eastern?
I'm not.
We'll talk about that tonight too.
Yeah, there may be differences, but I think it, you know, regular calling works on all of them. You know, I hear subtle things that are a little bit different. Osceolas, not so much, but like Merriam's, you know, they have a little squeaky clucks and stuff that are a little bit different to my ear. I'm not an expert on Merriam's or Rios or anything like that, but I can tell you there's subtle little things, but I think they'll come to the same box that a Eastern will.
Merriam's definitely more vocal.
Sure, yeah, and they you know, not taking anything away from people that hunt them, but they're a little bit easier to call. They respond better to calls. So, you know, to me, I've hunted a lot of places, and it seems to me like the Eastern, especially in the South, is some of the hardest turkeys to hunt, just because of the terrain and just the way it is. It just seems like so much water and thickets and that kind of stuff. But anybody else? You got another one? Go ahead.
Sorry. Do you have any kind of go-to types of call, or like, do you change up your calling style at all on heavy rain or heavy windy days?
On windy days, I'm more likely to use that tube more.
Yeah.
Some people like a box call on a windy day because they feel like it gets out better. But yeah, I mean, if I can't hear him very well, then he might not be able to hear me very well. So I'm probably gonna get a little louder, a little more aggressive on a windy day. Rainy days, not so much. I think turkeys tend to be in open areas on rainy days. They like to be able to see, and they like to be able to hear because they can't hear in the woods. So I'm probably going to change my strategy, maybe not my calling so much, but I'm gonna key in on big food plots and fields if it's raining. Yes, sir.
So all trumpet call makers drill the calls out their own way, making their own style. Do you take more than one trumpet with you, and do you only hunt with the call
I have killed turkeys with other people's trumpet early on, but now I only hunt with mine. And I like to think that I'm very satisfied with the ones that I make in the fact that I can change it up. I can do different things. And I really believe in sounding like more than one turkey. So what I will do, instead of changing trumpets, I'll just change the way I'm calling. I'll try to sound like two different hens. Like, I'll try to give you an example. So I'm mixing it up. I'm trying to sound like two or three if I can. But I've got a soft hen over here. I got a loudmouth hen. I got a raspy hen. I got a clear hen. So I got stuff going on there. And a well-made trumpet will be able to do all of those sounds. And there's some fine trumpet makers in there. And most of them will do it. You just got to find the one that fits the way you call. And you also got to learn, to run it. You can take any trumpet and learn how to run that call. And that's one reason I like my trumpets, just because I'm used to them, and I know how to run them. It would take me, if I grabbed somebody else's, I could kill a turkey with it, but it might take me a little time to get like I want, But yeah, I don't think you need a whole bunch of trumpets around your neck to sound like a flock. All right.
I have a very simple question. Do you think, is trumpet easier to learn than diaphragm? Or would you say it's harder?
I don't know. They're both pretty tough. Now, to run proficient, you can pick a diaphragm up and you can sound like something pretty quick. You can pick a trumpet up and sound like something pretty quick. But to get all the stuff, I'm going to say a trumpet's probably harder to master. The diaphragm is a little tricky, but once you learn to do it, you can go with it. But there's some things on a trumpet that are pretty tricky to pick up. It just takes, to me, it takes a little bit more time to learn the range of a trumpet, where a diaphragm is a little quicker learning curve. But they're both pretty, on the scale, they're both, I think, harder than the other calls. All right. Well, I appreciate y'all coming, and I hope everybody has a safe trip back, and I hope that snow will get on out of here on the